Guys, here's part 2 of our healing video. This is going to be on nature sticks, so I'm going to go through all the nature staffs, what they're used for, what the different builds for are, customization, and what IP I recommend. I have a lovely Oib who's going to be here. He's going to help me do a couple of the different staffs because some of them require healing another person. Okay, so this is my base build for any healing set. I like a Limhurst cape, I like a cleric robe, and my shoes switch around. I really like hunter shoes because it gives me less of a cooldown on my E. The first one we have is one-handed nature. So depending on the content, depends on what offhand I like to use. One-handed nature is best for healing, I'd say 5 to 8 people. And depending on the content, depends on what build you want to use. This is going to be for arenas. Let's start there. It's non-lethal content and accessible to everybody. I'm going to wear a Graveguard helm because I want instant heals to put out to my party. When I'm in arenas, I'm also going to have mana pots on, as well as I'm going to have an omelet on. I like to scale my food with my build, so I'll be using 0.2 in this because it is 8-1. If it was a lower build, I'd be using a lower omelet. As well as arenas are non-lethal, so I'm not scared of losing them, and I like the extra healing output. If I'm using this build open, it's going to change a little. I'm going to change to a Scholar Cowl, then I'm going to lower the intensity of my omelets because I'm not going to be taking out 8-1, 8-3. I'm probably going to be taking out 6-1. So this is my build for open world. I would actually change my offhand as well. The reason is this shield's going to give me a little bit more defensive, and my cast time on my E doesn't really matter because I'm going to be healing 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 people. Now there is something that you have to note with one-handed nature, and what makes it different than holy is that you have to stack your cubes. We talked in the previous video that I'll link below how to set up your keybinds to have better stacks. But sitting here and trying to make sure that your passive, which right here is every 4 spells cast, you increase your healing cast by 20 seconds for 3 seconds, lands on the right person. So if I'm being targeted, I'm going to try to land that on me. But if Oiv is being targeted, I'm going to try to land it on him. That gives him an extra little bonus on his healing. When I play this open world, when I play this in arenas, I also play Pawn W, which is protection of nature. When I take this out into open world to go into roads, I do recommend bringing in at least a tier 6 so that you have cleanse available and you also have revitalize available. Revitalize is a really cool spell because it actually returns mana to you or the person that you're casting it on. Check it out. See how it gives you mana and also health? If you're doing aspects in the roads, in honesty, it's very important. When I'm going around in roads or mists, I like to use a cleanse because if someone's trying to grail dagger me or one-shot pump me, it allows me to get out. Pretty cool. Moving on. Next weapon. We're going to actually go through my favorite weapon, which is Great Nature. I love Great Nature. The reason I love it is because it's used during my favorite content, which is 2vx. 2vx content or 3vx content. Because of this E. This E is amazing. It's called Living Armor. Whenever the target receives direct damage, they will restore 104 health. Now, note this does not work against dot damage. So if you have like a big curse on you and a fire on you, you're going to have a hard time because the burning is going to do damage to you and the dot damage from the curse is going to do damage to you. But if you check out this E, it gives this cute little tornado around you, and as they're being attacked, they get their health up. The reason I say I suggest this in 2vx content and not like a Hellgate is because a good player is going to know not to hit you, but when you're playing and you're fighting against multiple players, they're not going to all be able to coordinate to not hit you for your E. They just aren't. I don't really change my build up for this very much. Alright, I've got a little bit of damage on me. I'm going to self-cast my E. See how it's healing me for 164, 164, and he's damaging me for 50? So when you have more than one person on you, it really does give you an almost full health bar. It's kind of amazing, to be honest with you. The next build we're going to talk about is a Wild Staff. The Wild Staff E is a little different, so let's talk about it. It's called a Well of Life, and it places a Well of Life down on the floor, and everyone who stands in it receives healing. It works very well with melee dive comps, sometimes referred to as monkey comps, because essentially all your melee DPS has to stand in this E, the Blight Staff. Now, Blight Staff is where I start changing up my build. When I'm playing with Blight Staff, it's because I'm playing with a lot of people. I'm playing with probably 7 to 10 people. The reason that is because I'm going to be using Rejuvenating Breeze. Now, when you're breeze gaming and you're e-gaming, you want to have less cooldowns on those, so I'm going to be wearing an assassin cowl. The assassin cowl gives you a meditate, which increases your cooldown rate by 80%. I'm going to give you guys a go and show you what that looks like here. So if I stack my Qs normally, it looks like this, but if I stack my Qs on myself and then I self-cast W, everyone in my parameter is going to get all those leaves. Now, I can also double down with that and use my E. Now, the cool thing about this E is it makes me immune to forced movements. So say you're in arenas and you bring a couple different swaps on you and the enemy team has a bunch of CC. Maybe they have a bear, maybe they have a Grail Seeker, maybe they have a heavy maze tank, and you're committed to using nature. I usually go Blight, even though there's only 5 people, because it allows me to get away from their CC. So check this out. When I stack my breeze, I'm going to only stack 2. And the reason why is because that third is so pivotal. So I'm giving them healing just by 2, and then I'm going to go through my tab and manually stack Qs on them. That means I can go through all of my list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, stack a Q on them, and then they'll have heals for longer. It's all about sustaining and always having hots on you. I'm going to stack my Qs, going to give it to Oib, going to pop an E on him. I'm going to cancel my E early, and I'm going to do my Assassin Cowl. So stepping away from battle, getting it back, then I already immediately have Breeze back, which allows us to just sit there and fight for much, much longer. You can play Blight in Corrupted Dungeons as a solo player. You absolutely can. You also play Blight in Mists if you're sticking to the Abbeys. I've seen it played, they switched to Thorns. The reason they use it in the Abbeys is because all of those ghouls have that CC where they have a little ice block. So if you're looking for Fame Farm, I hear that the Abbeys are an okay place, and you can sit there in Thorns, kind of a neato little trick. Another point to point out about Thorns is this W is Bramble Seed. It's a interrupt as well as it CCs you. So if you're fighting like an aspect, you could interrupt it as well as slow the mob down itself. I say you can take Iron Root into 2v2 Hellgates or 2v2 Mists. It's not really used if you have more than 2 people. It's really a duo weapon versus another duo, not versus many people. Otherwise, I would say for open world, I would take Great Nature. The E though, you have to self-cast the E on yourself, and then I have to cast the E on my partner. It gives you this little line here that for the healing that you receive, your partner also receives healing. So it doubles down on the healing. Now here's the problem. If someone has bop, they can tether you away from each other and the tether explodes. If I link myself to damage, an ally and an enemy are linked, it transfers 30% of the healing received by the enemy to the ally. So if the enemy is sitting there and getting banged on really hard, I will tether me and the enemy. While his healer is healing him, I'm receiving that healing. As well as 10% of the damage I take goes to him. Does that make sense? So if I'm being focused and he's being focused and he's low, I want to tether us so that he gets more damage on him and I actually receive his heals. Now here's where it's kind of cool. The 2 enemies are linked. If 2 enemies are linked, it deals 50% of the damage one target takes to the other target as true damage.
Thank you for your
I honestly love it. I think it's such a fun weapon. Now, the only problem I have with it is besides the fact that you can cancel the E. Where's my buddy here? Besides the fact you can cancel the E just by stepping away too far, the E cooldown is very long. Do you see that? It's 18 seconds. That's a long time. All right, you also have another one called a Rampart Staff. A Rampart Staff is kind of a troll weapon. Spirit animal. If an ally touches it, it's 287 healing. It creates a 25-meter long trail that lasts for 9 seconds. And the content that I believe this is best used in would be statics. There's a lot of narrow hallways in statics that if you just sit there and pop out your E and throw it down, it really helps. It used to be used in ZVZs, but this healing doesn't do as much healing as it used to. So you'd have to have a couple different Rampart Staffs and line them up together. I was actually talking to Nanush, who is a Holy Healer main, and she mentioned that she will bring a Rampart Staff in statics with an occult. And you can bind the occult and the Rampart Staff together, giving you a little bit extra heals, a little bit extra protection. If you want to go out in solo PvE and you want to use nature, your best weapon is probably Druidic. You can sit here, you can use Pawn, you can have a shield off him. This is probably your build. The reason I use these boots is because if I'm killing a rock or an aspect, having this little roll, it really does help. Or sometimes killing the PvE inside of the roads. You're going to want to be on Thorns as well as your Interrupt, which means that you only need to bring out a tier 4 weapon. Interrupt, Bramble Seed, and then using the E as a self-cast just to give yourself a little bit more heals. It is a very popular way to take out low-tier gear and go fame farm them in the roads with nature. These are the other headpieces I want to talk about. Now, the reason I use a Scholar Cowl is because if I cast it on myself, it gives me damage resistance, as well as it increases my mana based on damage received. This is called a Royal Cowl, and I'll use it in some instances that I'm not receiving damage. I almost always bring it as a swap when I'm doing arenas, because sometimes the enemy team just won't hit you, and then you only have this one source of mana, and then you maybe have mana pots. If you're being a good healer in arenas, you need 3 sources of mana. If you're not going through your mana, some people are like, no, Basti, I never have mana issues. It's because you're not putting out enough healing. I'm sorry. You have to put out more. So challenge yourself to try to go through those mana sources. They're there for you for a reason. These are the other shoes I want to talk about. Royal shoes I use in arenas because it is an iframe. I would never use them in open world because they just don't give me enough mobility. That being said, sometimes I'm in open world and I'm going up against a engaged tank, which means that I have to get out of air compress. You can blink air compress with cleric sandals. Let me give you a little preview of how that works. See, I just blink out. It's actually a very easy thing to do. It does require a little bit of practice. The thing I want to mention is rejuvenating flower. I'm actually going to pair it with my blight build. So you have these flowers, and in a ZVZ situation or in a large group, again, which blight is for, I can throw these little flowers down on the ground, okay? And they grow, they have different stages. As they grow bigger, they do more healing. See, look, big heals. And they give them leaves. Isn't that neato? But if I only have it out to one bulb and I run over it, it's only gonna give me 1. This is going to require a lot of communication between you and your team, but it does mean that you can place little baubles around the ZVZ fight that you're taking in. And as they sit there and grow, the people who need them can run over them for extra healing. I think that's it. The last thing I'm going to talk about is food. You have a couple different types of omelets, including an Avalonian omelet. If you are doing solo things with DPS, such as Corrupted Dungeons or Blight, you do want to have an Avalonian omelet. If I'm running around, I just run around in a pork omelet. Again, I scale it based off of what the gear is that I'm using. And this is another one. This is your crab omelet. I like crab omelet with holy because I feel like it's a little bit more mana hungry to me. So that's when I would use that. But knowing that you have different omelets and different options is important. That's it. That's all I want to say about nature. If you guys have any questions or if you think I missed anything, please say so below in the comments.